Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Yaniv Hoffman. And today we'll speak about one of the most discussed topics out there, Russia-Ukraine war and its impact on cybersecurity of organizations and nation states. So by the time this video comes out, the Russia-Ukraine war would have advanced. Yet Ukraine offers stubborn resistance without much backing from NATO and the UN even today. Yes, the Western nations and the US have imposed financial and economical sanctions on Russia, but there have not been any military aggression signs from these countries. Have you wondered why it is so? Of course, there is no one straightforward answer to the question, right? The unpalatable fact is that all nations are wary of Russia and maybe starting a World War III, but it is not only because of its military might, but also because of its weaponized technological innovation with leading cybersecurity strength that can impact any nation and throw it into a tailspin. The Russia of 2022 has several aces up its sleeves that it could unleash on Ukraine and its supporters if any further escalation in hostilities occurs. Consequently, there could be retaliatory measures from Ukraine and its supporters, leading to a widespread cyber warfare and devastation of the global economy. The cyber threat from Russia. Where does the situation stand today? The Russians are on a stall, and there are even announcements of some withdrawals of forces from Kiev and other key positions, with the idea to strengthen their position in the territories that were taken already along the Russian-Belarus borders. We already heard threats about nuclear options with reasons to prevent other nations to get involved in the war directly. With that said, one weaponized path that continue and even ramp up is the cybersecurity warfare. And here, for a surprise of everyone, Ukraine was able to gather many supporters to fight back. As a result, cybersecurity experts have warned of the hostilities spilling into a full-scale cyber war that can leak and become a global one. While Russia is capable of launching a full-scale cyber war, it acknowledges that Ukraine has similar capabilities to retaliate strongly. And see how both sides are lining up for launching major cyber aggression. The entire Western nations are on a tenterhooks and preparing themselves for a cyber backlash. As an example, the Financial Times reported that the UK Central Bank has already warned its member banks of all looming threat of Russian-sponsored cyber attacks. Ukraine announced its launch of an IT army to defend against Russian cyber advances and soon declared the Belarus railway network and Russian satellite-based navigation system GLONASS as targets. The Newsweek reports regarding the Department of Homeland Security releasing a memo highlight Russia's potential and launching cyber attacks if Biden acts hastily and sends wrong signals. Ukraine prefers urging top cyber organizations to withdraw support from Russia. Reuters confirms that the US and European regulators have warned their banks to prepare for a Russian cyber attack threats. And Ukraine cyber-resistant groups eyes the Russian power grid and railways as their targets. So what do these news reports indicate? First, it clearly shows that Russia and Ukraine have two sets of armies ready to launch attack. One is their military forces, known to the world. The second one comprises their cyber armies that maintain low visibility but can unleash significant and strong cyber attacks on each other and affect the Western world energy, communication, and finance infrastructure. So that threat of cyber invasion is present. and it will not wane going by the recent trends. Now, the next question is, are Russia and Ukraine capable of launching cyber attacks with far-reaching implication? And people who follow the cyber landscape closely know the consequences of nation-states getting involved in cyber warfare. The world already has witnessed several examples of such incidents, and below are two such incidents that occurred in recent years. So in 2015, Ukrainian power grids witnessed a sudden shutdown. Similarly, Georgia also saw several cyber attacks on its infrastructure installation. The entire cyber world suspected back then Russia to be behind these attacks. Another very famous example is the blackout in the Natanz nuclear power plant in Iran that is being suspected to be a cyber attack by Israel. So I don't think the world needs further proof of different nations' capability to launch massive cyber attacks. So let us now discuss the types of cyber attacks the world can expect in connection with the Russia-Ukrainian war. And by worry of the following cyber attacks, no one can predict what Russia, Ukraine, or any other country can do. But it is known that state-sponsored cyber crimes have escalated when geopolitical tensions are high. And one cannot be complacent in such a situation because even the smallest cyber attack could lead to something massive. Therefore, you should keep your eyes wide open for threats like advanced persistent threats, APT, phishing, that is very common, malware, ransomware, DDoS attacks, and zero-day vulnerabilities, etc. Matters of concerns. So as tensions started brewing between Russia and Ukraine, the US moved into a state of alert, as is clear from the following information. The CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the US, cautioned impending Russian cyber attacks over US networks. The White House rightly warned of supply chain vulnerabilities because the US chip industry relies on Ukraine, source Neon. Besides, Russia exports various elements critical to manufacturing jet engines, semiconductors, medicines, automobiles, etc. Many industries also depend on Ukrainian technical expertise, especially coding and software engineers. Moreover, such industrial sectors directly link with Ukrainian national banks and other critical infrastructure. Thus, these organizations could end up as indirect targets of cyber attacks. Therefore, cyber attacks originating from Russia or Ukraine can affect businesses even if they are not directly connected with either Russia or Ukraine. Remember, a chain can only be as strong as its weakest link. Suppose you have a third-party supply chain vendor or service provider with the Ukrainian links. In that case, it will not take much time for your business to get affected, despite the countries involved in the cyber warfare are not launching any direct cyber attack on your business. So what would a global cyber war look like? And more than a month has passed since the Russian-Ukraine hostilities have commenced. Russia is not showing any signs of relenting, and neither is Ukraine giving up. There are some peace talks, and from time to time we hear some progress and slight hope, but seems we are not in a stage of a ceasefire or full halt of the fighting. Ukrainians will not like to experience a repeat attack of black energy that caused a complete blackout for nearly 80,000 customers of Ukrainian utility service providers in 2015. A similar attack known as the Indestroyer happened 1 year later when 1/5 of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, was out of power for an hour. A global cyber war can have even more far-reaching effects. For example, the NotPetya malware, a suspected Russian attack, disrupted Ukrainian infrastructure, including airports, railways, and banks. But did NotPetya restrict itself to Ukraine? It started spreading rapidly across the world, affecting various multinational companies, including the pharmaceutical behemoth Merck, the global shipping giant Maersk, FedEx European subsidiary, TNT Express, among many other organizations. You may have heard of the Stuxnet cyber attack, in which state forces allegedly working behind the curtain to destroy more than 1,000 centrifuges in Iranian uranium enrichment facilities. So indirectly, the attack depleted Iran's capability of launching nuclear weapons. The Colonial Pipeline attack in May 2021 resulted in many US states declaring a state of emergency because of a major fuel shutdown crisis. Colonial Pipeline supplies nearly 45% of the East Coast diesel, petrol, and jet fuel requirement. Though the Russians were not directly involved in these attacks, everyone knows the DarkSide ransomware group responsible for these attacks as Russian supporters. Something of this sort is just waiting to happen. And if cyber attacks could happen with impunity during normal times, how can we rule them out in the World War-like situation? Under such circumstances, how dangerous could the retaliation be? A no-holds-barred nuclear attack can have far-reaching implications. And before we discuss what a cyber war would look like, let us understand the two primary types of cyber attack. And indirect cyber attacks involve crippling infrastructures like railway, power grids, banking institute, healthcare, water treatment, and supply plants, supply chains, etc. While there is not much you can do about it, how long can you cope without food, electricity, cash, water, and transportation? Second, a direct cyber attack can have immediate repercussions because they get personal. For example, you could end up losing all data on your computers and information system. Imagine the magnitude of the problem, especially if you do not have any backup. So in either case, the surfers are innocent people who have nothing to do with the political hostilities. Even as we produce this video, cyber attacks, of course, are being planned with impunity. Reuters reports that SAP Russia is shutting down its cloud operation. CNN reports Russian internet addresses scanning 5 US energy companies' network as a prelude to hacking attempts. The Star reports that Ukraine's state-owned telecom service provider, Ukrtelecom, was the target of a powerful cyber attack on Monday, March 29, 2022. Though Ukrainian replied the attack and started restoring normal services, interconnectivity was disrupted for some time. This attack was on the heels of a similar incident that occurred earlier this month involving Triolan, with Russia launching cyber attacks on Ukraine and its suspected allies, like the NATO countries. Can we expect them to remain quiet? Definitely no. They can retaliate with equal forces and disrupt Russian infrastructure. In fact, we have seen that the US and UK have already issued adversaries to their organization to exercise caution. So one can expect the cyber wings of the respective forces to be active full-time and respond immediately, leaving the Russian system in disarray. Besides, Russia knows that Ukraine is also equally capable of launching similar cyber attacks. Ukraine is also not happy with many countries that have not supported in the UN. They could target the cyber warfare against such countries. Naturally, these countries would respond accordingly, and the war could spread uncontrollably. Such a situation can result in an eye for an eye, can leave the whole world blind. To sum up, with the Western nation imposing economic sanctions on Russia, one should be prepared to face cyber attack retaliation from the Russian side. Russia has a massive reputation for being a Goliath in the cyber warfare. On the other side, Ukraine is also prepared with its cyber army to defend against Russian cyber advances and launch cyber attacks. Hence, it requires a concentrated effort from all nations to safeguard their network systems from the consequences of a cyber war from both countries and other third-party nations that could jump in to take undue advantage of the situation and settle their scores. Time alone will say how the situation will develop in the coming days and weeks, but the signs are imminent. Russia is undoubtedly gearing up for a cyber war. Ukraine is no pushover either, because some of the best hacking brains are in Ukraine. So while Russia and Ukraine are locking horns furiously, the entire world is watching with bated breath because of the cyber war threat. The attack can be swift and paralyzed, though we keep our fingers crossed, hoping that the situation does not escalate to such high levels. Nations across the globe have to take preventive steps to protect their infrastructure from massive cyber attacks. If you survived until now, I really appreciate it. Hope it was insightful for you as it was enjoyable for me, and see you in the next video.